Hi, sir. So this is our first topic for our statics final output. Vectors. Scalar. A scalar quantity is any quantity in physics that has magnitude only, number values with units. So here's examples. The speed, like 35 meters per second. The distance, 25 meters. In age, 16 years. So a vector quantity is any quantity in physics that has both magnitude and direction. So the velocity is 25 meters per second north. In acceleration, 10 meters per second squared south. The force, 20 newtons east. So an arrow above is the symbol illustrate that the vector quantity, it indicates magnitude and directions. So here are more additional problems for you to know what vector is. A man walks 46.5 meters east, then another 20 meters east. Calculate his displacement relative to where he started. So the magnitude relates that the size of the arrow and the direction relates to the way of the arrow is drawn. So in the vectors, they are called the non-collinear vectors. So these two vectors are perpendicular to each other. You must use the Pythagorean theorem to know that. So here's it. Where it started 120 kilometer east and then he turns 160 kilometers north. And there you will find the finish line from the starting line. So it is called the hypotenuse, also called the resultant. So the formula for that is c squared is equals to a squared plus b squared, or simply c is equals to square root of a squared plus b squared. So in the example displacement, ask for a c, and since it is a vector quantity, we need to report its direction. Note, when draw a right triangle that must conveys the type of motion, you must draw your components head to toe. So here are examples from more directions, north from 2D directions, north, south, east, west, and their correspondent 45 degrees angles. Just putting an n of e is not good enough. So here gonna make an example. We're given a numeric value and direction, 120 kilometers east and 160 kilometers north. So in searching for an angle using tangent theta on the opposite side over the adjacent side is equals to 160 over 120 is equals to 1.33. So using to your calcu, you can use shift tan and then put the specific value and it will give you the answer. So here's another method if your components are missing. A person walks 65 meters 25 degrees east of north. So what is his horizontal and vertical components? The goal, always make a right triangle. To solve this component, we often use the trigonometrical functions since sines and cosines. Cosines is equals to adjacent side over the hypotenuse side. So the sine is equals to the opposite side over the hypotenuse side. So like so the adjacent side is equals to the adjacent side or the vertical component is equals to 65 cosine 25. The 65 is the hypotenuse, which is 65 meters, and the cosine degree 25 is the degrees given. So it is equal to the 58.91 meters north. Then the opposite side is equals to the hypotenuse component. So the opposite is equals to the horizontal component, which is equals to 65 sine 25. It equals 27.47 meters.
example po is, a boat moves with a velocity of 15 meters per second north in a river which flows with a velocity of 8 meters per second west. Calculate the boat's resultant velocity with respect to due north. So first, drawing muna yung first na given. 15 meters per second north. Tapos, pumunta siya ng 8 meters per second west. Tapos, sabi niya, calculate daw yung resultant. So, calculate RV. And yung kanyang direction. Siyempre, pag vectors, yung direction plus resultant. So, para makuha yung resultant niya, makakabuo tayo ng triangle. So, ano lang siya, Pythagorean theorem. So, y squared plus x squared plus square root mo. So, sa case na to, 15 squared plus 8 squared is equal to 17 meters per second. So, yun na yung resultant. Next naman is, ano naman natin yung angle. Tangent theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. So, yung opposite side is yung 8 meters per second and yung adjacent side is 15 meters per second. So, tangent theta is equal to 8 over 15. So, para makuha mo yung theta, transpose mo yung tangent, so magiging siyang arctan ng 8 over 15. Or equal siya sa 28.1. So, yung final answer natin is 17 meters per second at 28.1 degrees west of north. Alright. So, next example is, a storm system moves 5,000 kilometer due east, then shift course at 40 degrees north of east for 1,500 kilometers. Calculate the storm's resultant displacement. So first, is drawing muna natin yung mga given. So, 5,000 kilometer due east. Tapos, nag-shift siya ng course ng 40 degrees north of east. So, yan. So, yung gagawin natin dito is, kukunin muna yung component ng 40 degrees na vertical and horizontal component para masolve natin yung resultant mula dun sa simula. Okay, so, yan. So, yung horizontal component, then vertical component. So, para makuha natin yung horizontal component, meron tayong given na angle and yung resultant. So, yung gagamitin natin is cosine, because cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So, yung horizontal component niya is equal sa 1,500 cosine 40 and equal siya sa 1,149.1. And yung vertical component naman niya is sine theta because sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So, vertical component is equal to 1,500 sine 40 and is equal to 964.2 kilometer north. So, yun. Yung gagawin naman natin yan is i-add yung vertical component dun sa una kasi x-axis siya para makabuo tayo ng triangle. So, yun nga, 5,000 plus yung horizontal component, 1,149.1 is equal to 6,149.1 kilometers. So, ganito yung magiging figure niya yan. So, nakabuo na tayo ng regular right triangle. So, yung pagsasolve ng resultant is yung parang yung una lang. Kukunin natin yung hypotenuse and yung angle ng direction. So, yun. Pythagorean theorem is square root ng y squared plus x squared. So, square root ng 6,149.1 squared plus 964.2 squared is equal to 6,224.2 kilometers. So, para kunin naman ang angle, So, tangent ang gagamitin natin kasi may given tayong opposite and adjacent. So, tangent theta is equal to 964.2 kilometers over 6,149.1 kilometers is equal to 0.157. Tapos, i-transpose mo yung tangent, so magiging siyang arctan ng 0.157 and equal siya sa 8.92 degrees. So, yung final answer dito is 6,224 kilometer at 8.92 degrees north of east. So, yun. Ganun lang ka-easy. Alright. Putulin mo yun, Zik.
Friction. First, the moment of a force. Moment is a measure of the capacity or ability of the force to produce twisting or turn effects about an axis. In short, moment, either clockwise or counterclockwise position. So from the figure above, O is the moment center and D is the moment arm. The moment M of force F about point O is equals to the product of F and D. So for you to know, let's see that Y component is like a pipe. So the force is going to clockwise. So the force going to clockwise, it will turn the Y axis, which is your moment of center. So couples. Couples is a system of force whose magnitude of the resultant is zero and yet has a moment sum. Geometrically, couple is composed of two equal forces that are parallel to each other and acting in opposite direction. The magnitude of the couple is given by C is equals to FD, where F of the two forces and D is the moment arm of perpendicular distance between the forces.
Calculate the sum of the moments acting about the point P. So, yung problem natin is, hahanapin natin yung moment na nag-act dun sa P. So, number 1 is 5 newtons. So, clockwise siya kasi papunta siya dun sa P, and 3 yung distance niya kasi 2 plus 1 is equals to 3. So, 5 times 3 is equals to 15. Number 2, yung 4 newtons, ito-times siya sa 1 kasi yung distance niya to P is 1. So, and negative siya kasi counterclockwise siya. So, 4 times 1 is equals to 4. Tapos, number 3, yung 3 newtons, 1 din yung distance niya kasi yun yung papunta sa point P. And negative siya kasi counterclockwise. So, yung total moment na nag-act doon sa figure is 15 minus 4 minus 3 is equals to 8. Yun lang.
So, friction, the contact resistance exerted by one body when the second body moves or tends to move past the first body. So, types of friction. Here are some types of friction. So the first one is the dry friction, also called as column friction, occurs when the unlubricated surface of two solids are in contact and slide or tend to slide from each other. If lubricant separates these two surfaces, the friction created is called lubricated friction. This section will deal only with dry friction. Second one, the fluid friction occurs when layers of two viscous fluids moves at different velocities. The relative velocity between layers cause frictional force between fluid elements. Thus no fluid friction occurs when there is no relative velocity. So the third one, skin friction, also called friction drag, is component of the force resisting the motion of a solid body through a fluid. Next, the internal friction is associated with shear deformation of the solid material subjected to the cyclical loading. As deformation undergo during loading, internal friction may accompany this deformation. So here's the elements of dry friction. N is equals to the reaction perpendicular to the surface, and F is the frictional force, C is the coefficient of friction, and R is the resultant of F and N, and theta is the angle of friction.
A really big box of donuts are at rest at a tabletop. If the box weighs 120 Newton and the coefficient of friction between donut box and table are mu 0.3, how much force will it take to get the box to slide? Yung formula natin sa frictional force is F equals to mu N. At makuha natin yung normal force sa summation FV. So, N is equals to W. So, force is equals to 0.3 times 120 Newton is equals to 36 Newton. 100-pound force is pulling a 200-pound block as shown. The coefficient of static friction between the block and the floor is mu equals 0.6 and the coefficient of kinetic friction is mu equals 0.4. A. What is the friction force between the block and the floor? B. Will the block move? So sa A, inahanap lang yung friction force ng block and the floor. Kaya yung gagamitin lang natin is mu equals 0.6. Sabi naman, tinatanong kung yung 100 pound ba magagalaw ng 200 pound block. Una, kukunin lang natin yung normal force gamit yung summation FV. N minus W. So, N is equals to W. Kaya yung normal force natin is 200 pound. Given na mu na 0.6. At nakuha na rin natin yung normal force na 200 pound. Makukuha na niya natin yung friction force. F is equals to mu N. So, 0.6 times 200 pound is equals to 120 pound. Yung 120 pound, yun yung force na least force na mapapagalaw niya yung 200 pound. Kaya, yung sagot sa B, will not move kasi 100 pound lang siya.